Beggar girl asks for help from millionaire at grocery store, but is shocked when she finds out why. Comment what you think will happen and subscribe to my channel to support my work. The midday sun beat down on the concrete sidewalks of Harmony Creek's town square when Arthur Henderson, 52, decided to take a lunch break. His hands, calloused from working with wood, gripped a leather briefcase as he walked toward Rosie's diner, where he always ate on weekdays. The routine had become his sanctuary in the last 2 years. Ever since Carol left on that rainy night, he preferred not to remember. Owner of the largest custom cabinet shop in town, Arthur had built his life on solid foundations: hard work, honesty, and a meticulous obsession with detail that made his kitchens and custom bedrooms sought after even in neighboring towns. But beneath this facade of a successful man, a deep loneliness gnawed at him, fueled by the absence of children he and Carol had never managed to have, and by the devastating loss that had left him completely adrift. It was then that his eyes fixed on a scene that made his heart race. There, near the central fountain of the square, a girl with curly hair and eyes as big as saucers held a plastic cup in her small hands. She couldn't have been more than 4 years old, her bare feet contrasting with the floral dress, faded by time and need. Beside her, a man of approximately 40, thin and with stubble, spoke softly while watching the passers-by. What caught Arthur's attention was not only the obvious circumstances of that situation, but something much more subtle and disturbing. While the man introduced himself to passers-by as Walter and said that Lily was his daughter, the girl made strange movements with her hands when he wasn't looking. Small gestures that seemed like desperate calls for help, as if trying to communicate something that her words couldn't express. Arthur stopped a few yards away, pretending to examine his cell phone while watching the interaction. Walter had gentle manners with the child. There was no aggressiveness in his gestures, but there was something in Lily's eyes that didn't match the explanation he gave to people. A deep sadness, a silent despair that made Arthur's chest tighten in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. The girl looked up and her eyes met his for a few seconds. In that brief moment, Arthur was absolutely certain she was asking for help. She wasn't just a child in a situation of social vulnerability. She was a child who needed to be saved from something he didn't yet understand. Walter noticed they were being watched and quickly took Lily's hand, whispering something in her ear before they began to move away from the square. The man didn't seem threatening, on the contrary. There was a genuine kindness in his movements. But that only made the situation even more confusing and worrying. Arthur made an impulsive decision that would change his life forever. Completely forgetting lunch at Rosie's, he began to discreetly follow the man and the girl through the brick streets of the historic town. He always kept a safe distance, using his familiarity with every alley and corner of Harmony Creek to not lose sight of them. The two walked for about 20 minutes until they reached a simpler neighborhood on the outskirts, where the Victorian houses gave way to modest buildings and unpaved streets. Walter stopped in front of a small house, painted faded blue, with an unkempt garden in front. Arthur hid behind a tree and watched as they entered. Over the next few minutes, he managed to hear fragments of conversation through the open window. Walter spoke affectionately to Lily, offering her water and asking if she was hungry. The girl's voice was too low to be understood, but the tone seemed respectful, almost submissive. There were no screams or signs of violence, which left Arthur even more intrigued. When he finally decided to go home, his mind was buzzing with questions. Who was that man, really? Why did Lily make those signs of distress if he treated her well? And most importantly, what should he do with this information? That night, Arthur barely slept. The images of the big-eyed girl wouldn't leave his head, and for the first time in 2 years, he felt that something had awakened within him, a purpose that went beyond his empty routine. Bethany, his younger sister and partner in the cabinet shop, noticed his distraction during the dinner they had together every Wednesday. "You're acting strange today, Arthur. Did something happen?" Bethany asked, her worried eyes studying her older brother's face. He hesitated for a moment, wondering if he should share what he had seen. Bethany had always been the voice of reason between the two, the person who stopped him from making impulsive decisions, especially after Carol left. But something told him that this time he needed to trust his instincts. "I saw a strange situation in the square today," Arthur began, choosing his words carefully. "A child who seemed to be asking for help." Bethany frowned, immediately alert. "What kind of help? Do you think she's being abused?" "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." The words came out of his mouth with a determination that surprised him. For the first time since Carol left, Arthur Henderson felt he had found something worth fighting for. The following days turned into a silent obsession for Arthur. Every morning, before opening the cabinet shop, he passed through the central square, hoping to find Walter and Lily again. Bethany noticed the change in her brother's routine, but respected his silence, realizing that something profound was happening in his life. On Thursday, his persistence was rewarded. There they were again, in the same location, with the same dynamics. Walter held an improvised sign asking for help to support his daughter, while Lily remained by his side, her gaze lost, and those same discreet gestures that seemed to scream for help. This time, Arthur decided to approach. Pretending to look for change in his wallet, he stopped near the man and left a few coins in the girl's cup. Walter thanked him with genuine politeness, and Arthur could observe up close that there was no malice in his eyes, only a deep sadness that he knew well. "Your daughter is very beautiful," Arthur commented, trying to start a conversation. "Thank you, sir," Walter replied, his voice full of emotion. "She's all I have in this world." Lily looked up at Arthur, and for a second he was sure she wanted to say something. But Walter quickly diverted the girl's attention, offering her a piece of bread he had taken from a bag. Over the following weeks, Arthur developed a routine of discreet observation. He discovered that they appeared in the square 3 times a week, always at the same times. He noticed that Walter treated Lily with genuine care, shared with her all the food they managed to buy, and that the girl, despite the signs of distress, didn't seem to be physically afraid of him. The first big discovery came through Darlene, his housekeeper. During a casual conversation, she mentioned a distant cousin who had lost her young daughter during a county fair months ago. "Poor Emerald," Darlene sighed as she folded Arthur's clothes. "Ever since little Lily disappeared, she hasn't been the same person. She works as a seamstress over in Crestwood, but every weekend she comes back here to look for the girl." Arthur's heart almost stopped. Lily, the same name as the child in the square. "How did she disappear?" he asked, trying to keep his voice casual. "It was at a county fair here in town. The girl was playing with other kids. When they looked, she was gone. They searched all night, even involved people from other towns, but they never found her." Emerald almost went crazy with despair. That night, Arthur couldn't sleep a wink. The pieces began to fit together in a disturbing way. If Lily had disappeared during a county fair and was now with Walter, who introduced himself as her father, something very serious was happening. The following Saturday, he decided to follow the man and the girl to their house again. This time he was bolder and managed to position himself where he could hear the conversations better. What he discovered left him even more confused. Walter didn't talk to Lily like someone who had kidnapped a child. On the contrary, his words were filled with genuine paternal love. He told stories, sang lullabies, asked about her drawings. But there was something in those interactions that didn't fit. "Daddy Walter," Arthur heard Lily's small voice through the window. "When are we going to visit my mum?" The silence that followed was deafening. Arthur moved closer and managed to see through a crack in the curtain. Walter was kneeling in front of the girl, his hands trembling slightly. "Your mummy had to travel, remember? She'll be back someday, but for now it's just you and me," he replied, his voice choked up. "But I remember where she lives," Lily insisted, her big eyes shining with contained tears. "I can show you the way." No, honey, you're confusing things. I'm your mother now. The conversation revealed a devastating truth. Lily remembered her real mother, but Walter was trying to make her forget. Not out of malice, but out of a desperate need that Arthur was beginning to understand. In the following weeks, Arthur immersed himself in a silent investigation that consumed all his thoughts. He spoke discreetly with Walter's neighbors and discovered that the man had lost his only daughter, Bethany, the previous winter. The girl had contracted pneumonia and hadn't survived. "Poor Walter," said Irene, a lady who lived on the same street. After Bethany was gone, he was completely lost. The girl was everything to him. When he showed up with this new child, we thought it was a cousin or something. The story became more complex with each discovery. Walter wasn't a common criminal, but a desperate man trying to fill the void left by the loss of his daughter. And Lily, a lost child who had found care and affection, but who couldn't forget her real family. During this period, Arthur also discovered more about Emerald through discreet conversations with Darlene. Lily's mother had developed severe depression after her daughter's disappearance and was 5 months pregnant. She worked tirelessly as a seamstress to support herself and the baby on the way, but spent every spare cent looking for her lost daughter. "She walks around the whole city every weekend," Darlene said with tearful eyes. "Shows Lily's picture to everyone, offers a reward she can't afford to pay. It's heartbreaking." The situation reached a critical point when Arthur realized that Walter was planning something. During one of his observations, he heard the man on the phone talking about a fresh start far from here. The possibility that he could take Lily to another state filled Arthur with panic. That night, as he watched the stars from his bedroom window, Arthur faced one of the most difficult decisions of his life. He could report Walter to the authorities and ensure that Lily was returned to her mother, but that would destroy a man who was genuinely trying to be a father again, even if in the wrong way. Or he could try a different, more humane approach, which might save both the child and the man who loved her as a daughter. But that would mean getting directly involved in a situation that could become dangerous and unpredictable. Bethany found her brother in the kitchen at 3 in the morning, drinking coffee and lost in thought. "Arthur, you can't keep going on like this," she said, sitting down next to him. "Whatever's going on, you need to make a decision. This obsession is consuming you." He looked at his sister, seeing in her eyes the same concern that Carol used to show when he got lost in his projects. But this time, it was different. This time, a child needed him, and he couldn't just pretend he didn't know. Arthur's decision came abruptly on a Tuesday afternoon, when he saw Walter carrying 2 old suitcases and putting them in the trunk of a borrowed car. Lily was beside him, holding a rag doll that seemed to be her only toy, her eyes confused, observing the movement. Arthur knew it was now or never. If he let those 2 leave, he might never find them again, and Emerald would spend the rest of her life searching for a daughter who would be thousands of miles away. He took a deep breath, straightened his shirt, and crossed the street with determined steps. "Excuse me, Walter," he called out, making the man turn around, startled. Do you know me?" Walter asked, instinctively placing his hand on Lily's shoulder protectively. "Yes, I do. And I believe we need to talk about Lily," Arthur said, keeping his voice calm but firm. Walter's face paled instantly, his eyes filled with panic, and he squeezed the girl's hand tighter. "I don't know what you're talking about. Lily is my daughter." "Walter, I know about Bethany," Arthur said softly, watching how those words hit the man like a punch in the stomach. "I know you lost your daughter last winter. And I know that Lily disappeared during a county fair a few months ago." Walter staggered slightly, leaning on the car. Lily looked from one man to another, without fully understanding what was happening, but sensing the tension in the air. "Please," Walter whispered, tears beginning to stream down his face. "She's all I have left. When I found her wandering alone that night, crying and lost, I couldn't just hand her over and be alone again." "What about her mother, Walter?" Emerald has been looking for her for months. She's pregnant and desperate, spending every cent she doesn't have trying to find her daughter. The name Emerald made Walter flinch even further. His eyes widened with a mixture of surprise and something that seemed to be recognition. You know her?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I know someone who knows her. And you know her too, don't you? You always knew who Lily's mother was." Walter closed his eyes and let out a deep sob. When he opened them again, the facade was gone. There was only a man broken by pain and grief. "I met Emerald years ago," he confessed. "She lived in the same neighborhood as me when Bethany was still alive. We'd see her and Lily in the square sometimes. When I found the girl lost that night, I recognized her immediately." "Then why didn't you give her back to her mother?" Walter looked at Lily, who was now clinging to his leg, sensing the emotional tension of the moment. "Because I knew that Emerald is a single mother, works hard, and can barely support herself. I thought I could offer Lily more stability, that she would be happier with me, even knowing that her mother was suffering. I convinced myself it was for the child's good," Walter admitted, his voice broken by guilt. "But the truth is, I couldn't stand the idea of being alone again. After Bethany was gone, the loneliness was killing me slowly." Lily tugged at Walter's pants and looked up with her big eyes. "Daddy Walter sad?" she asked with her small voice. Walter knelt in front of her, tears falling freely now. "Yes, my little one. Daddy is very sad. Is it because we're leaving?" "I don't want to leave. I want to stay and see Mommy," Lily said, and her words were like a stab in the heart of both men. Arthur felt his own tears threatening to escape. The situation was even more complex than he had imagined. Walter wasn't a villain, he was just a desperate man, trying to fill a void impossible to fill. And Lily, innocent in the middle of it all, had developed genuine love for that man who had cared for her with affection, even knowing that her real mother was somewhere looking for her. "Walter," Arthur said, approaching and placing his hand on the man's shoulder. "You gave love and care to Lily when she needed it most. That can't be erased. But now it's time to do what's right. If I give her up, I'll be alone again," Walter cried. "I don't know if I can survive that." "You don't have to be alone," Arthur replied, the words coming from his heart. "Emerald will need help with the new baby. Lily will need a father figure, and I also need a purpose in my life." Walter looked up, confused. "What are you suggesting?" "That we do this the right way, together. That you tell Emerald the truth, ask for forgiveness, and see if we can build something that works for everyone, especially for Lily." At that moment, as if fate wanted to test the resolution of the three, a young woman appeared at the end of the street. She walked slowly, holding a piece of paper in her hand, clearly a photo, and showed it to the people in the houses. Even from a distance, it was possible to see the rounded belly of an advanced pregnancy. "That's her," Walter whispered, his face growing even paler. "That's Emerald." Lily followed the men's gaze, and when she saw the woman, her whole face lit up in a way that Arthur had never seen before. "Mummy!" she cried, dropping the rag doll and running towards the woman. Emerald raised her head at the sound of the familiar voice, and when she saw the girl running towards her, the paper with the photo escaped from her hands and flew away in the wind. She fell to her knees right there on the street, her arms open, while Lily threw herself into her lap. The reunion between mother and daughter was a moment of pure emotion that made even Walter smile through his tears. But when Emerald looked up and saw the man standing next to the car with the suitcases, her expression changed completely. "You," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of gratitude and fury. "You had my daughter this whole time." Walter couldn't answer. He just nodded, tears preventing any words from coming out. Arthur knew that the next moments would define the future of all of them. Emerald had every right to be furious, to call the authorities, to ensure that Walter was punished for keeping her daughter away from her during months of agony. But as he watched Lily, embraced by her mother, still looking back towards Walter with affection in her eyes, Arthur realized that this story had the potential for a very different ending than anyone could have imagined. Emerald remained kneeling on the street for long minutes, holding Lily as if fearing that the girl might disappear again. Her tears wet her daughter's curly hair as she whispered words of love and relief. Arthur and Walter watched in silence, each processing the magnitude of that moment in different ways. "Mummy, why are you crying?" Lily asked, pulling back slightly to look at her mother's face. "I was okay. Daddy Walter took care of me." Emerald looked up at Walter, and for a moment fury and gratitude battled in her expression. "Daddy Walter," she repeated, her voice trembling. Walter took a step forward, his hands shaking. "Emerald, I need to ask for your forgiveness. What I did was wrong, but I swear by the memory of my Bethany that I took care of Lily as if she were my own daughter." "You recognize me," Emerald said. It wasn't a question, but a bitter realization. "You always knew who I was." "Yes," he admitted, unable to lie in the face of the pain in her eyes. "When I found her lost that night at the county fair, crying alone on the street, I knew exactly who she was. But I had just lost my Bethany and thought you had the right to make me go through the hell I went through." Emerald exploded, getting up with Lily in her arms. "Do you know what it was like to look for her every day? Do you know what it was like to work 16 hours a day to pay detectives who found nothing? Do you know what it was like to find out I was pregnant in the middle of this anguish?" Walter fell to his knees right there on the street. "Forgive me, Emerald. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I beg you to forgive me. I took good care of her. I swear I took good care." It was then that Lily did something that no one expected. She broke free from her mother's arms, ran to Walter and hugged his neck. "Don't be sad, Daddy Walter. Mommy won't yell at you." The child's innocent gesture broke something in Emerald's heart. She saw how her daughter really cared for that man, how there was no fear in her eyes, only genuine love. It was impossible to deny that Walter had taken good care of Lily, even having made the worst decision of his life. Arthur decided it was time to intervene. "Emerald, I know we don't know each other, but my name is Arthur Henderson. It was through my housekeeper Darlene that I found out about you. She's your distant cousin." Emerald turned to him, confused. "Darlene? The cousin Darlene who works in town?" "Exactly. She told me about your despair looking for Lily. That's how I managed to put the pieces together and realize what was happening. And you didn't look for me before. Didn't you think to let me know you had found my daughter?" The question hit Arthur hard, and he felt the weight of his own omission. "You're right to be angry with me too. I took too long to act because I'm also a man who has lost a lot in life, and I recognized Walter's pain. That doesn't justify it, but it explains my hesitation." Emerald studied the two men for a long moment, Walter still kneeling on the street with Lily in his arms, and Arthur standing, clearly tormented by his own conscience. Finally, she placed her hand over her rounded belly and sighed deeply. "Lily, come here," she called softly. The girl obeyed, but continued to hold Walter's hand. "Do you like Daddy Walter?" "Yes, Mommy. He makes yummy food and tells nice stories. And he said that one day you would come back." Emerald closed her eyes, fighting against the contradictory emotions that consumed her. When she opened them again, there was a new determination in her gaze. "Get up, Walter," she said firmly. "I'm not going to pretend that I can forgive you today or tomorrow. What you did to me was too cruel. But my daughter loves you, and I'm not going to take that away from her after everything she's already been through." Walter stood up slowly, not believing what he was hearing. "But there are conditions," Emerald continued. "First, you're going to tell me everything that happened in these months, every detail of how you took care of her. Second, you're going to help me explain to her that she has a little brother on the way. And third, if you want to continue being a part of her life, it's going to be on my terms. I accept anything." Walter said, his voice choked up. Anything you say. Arthur watched the scene with a mixture of admiration and hope. Emerald was demonstrating a maturity and generosity that few could have in her situation. "And you," she said, turning to Arthur, "why did you get involved in this? What do you gain by helping strangers?" The question caught Arthur off guard. He looked at Lily, then at Walter, and finally at Emerald. "I lost my wife 2 years ago. We never managed to have children. When I saw your situation, I realized that maybe I could turn my pain into something useful." "Want to be a hero?" she asked, a tone of suspicion in her voice. "No, I want to be useful. I want to have a purpose again." The weeks that followed were of adjustments and discoveries for everyone. Emerald moved back to Harmony Creek, accepting a job at Arthur's cabinet shop, where she could use her sewing skills to create custom covers for the furniture. Walter found work as a helper at the same company, where his dedication and gratitude made him an exemplary employee. Lily flourished in this new arrangement. She had her mother back, maintained her affection for Walter, who was now officially her godfather, and gained in Arthur an avuncular figure who pampered her with gifts and weekend outings. When her little brother was born, she insisted that he be named Bethany, in honor of the daughter that Walter had lost. The most emotional moment came 6 months later, when Emerald finally managed to say the words that everyone was waiting for. "I forgive you, Walter. What you did was wrong, but I see how you love my daughter, and that counts for something." Bethany, who had followed all the transformation of her brother, commented during a Sunday dinner at Arthur's house. "I haven't seen you so happy since Carol left." Arthur smiled, watching through the window Lily playing in the yard with little Bethany in her arms, while Walter told stories and Emerald sewed in the afternoon sun. "I discovered that sometimes the family we choose is as important as the one we were born into." Walter approached the window and joined Arthur. "Thank you," he said simply, "for giving me the chance to do the right thing. Thank you for showing me that there is still goodness in the world, even when it is lost," Arthur replied. That night, as everyone dined together around the large table that Arthur had made especially for these gatherings, Lily asked a question that made everyone laugh. "Why do adults take so long to be friends?" Emerald exchanged a look with Walter, then with Arthur, and replied, "Because sometimes we need to hurt each other a little to learn how to heal each other, honey." And so in a small town, 4 broken hearts found a way to put themselves back together, proving that true love sometimes requires us to let go of what we want most, so that we can receive something even better in return. The family that formed there didn't follow any traditional manual, but it worked with the chaotic perfection of those who understand that to love means, above all, wanting the best for the other, even when it hurts. If you liked this wonderful story, please comment. Your opinion is very important, and if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.